The transport shuttle descended through layers of crystalline atmosphere, offering Marcus Vale his first glimpse of the celestial citadel. The massive station hung suspended between 3 moons, its spiraling architecture defying conventional physics. After 6 months of preparation, countless briefings, and one particularly awkward farewell dinner with his mother, who still didn't quite grasp what intergalactic peace negotiations meant, he was finally here. Marcus adjusted the collar of his diplomatic uniform, a sleek charcoal design with subtle earth motifs woven into the fabric. At 32, he'd become one of humanity's youngest envoys, a distinction he'd earned through equal parts natural charisma and stubborn optimism. His colleagues often joked that he could negotiate a ceasefire between fire and water, though Marcus preferred to think of himself as simply believing in people's better natures. The shuttle docked with a gentle thud, and Marcus gathered his minimal belongings. Travel light, think heavy, that was his personal motto. The airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light, walls adorned with what appeared to be living art that shifted and reformed as he passed. Ambassador Vale? A holographic attendant materialized before him, its form flickering between various humanoid shapes, as if uncertain which would be most comforting. Please proceed to the reception hall. The assembly awaits your arrival. Marcus followed the glowing pathway through corridors that seemed impossibly vast, yet intimately scaled. He passed beings of every conceivable form, some towering and crystalline, others small and quicksilver, a few that existed as clouds of luminescent particles. Each gave him curious glances, and he returned them with warm smiles, making mental notes about body language and cultural cues. The reception hall exceeded even his considerable imagination. A dome of transparent material revealed the cosmic vista beyond, 3 moons hanging like jewels against the star-studded darkness. Hundreds of delegates filled the space, arranged in clusters that clearly denoted political alliances and ancient grievances. Presenting Ambassador Marcus Vale of Earth, announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Mediator for the peace negotiations between the Kryn Empire and the Sorvian Collective. The conversations didn't cease, but Marcus felt the weight of countless eyes upon him. He descended the grand staircase with measured confidence, acknowledging nods and ignoring subtle sneers with equal grace. "Quite the entrance they give you young species," came a voice beside him, musical and tinged with amusement. Marcus turned to find a woman unlike any being he'd encountered in his research. Her skin held the deep violet of twilight, marked with silver patterns that seemed to flow like rivers across her arms and shoulders. Hair the color of starlight cascaded past her shoulders, and her eyes large and luminous, shifting between silver and pale gold, studied him with unsettling intensity. "I suppose they're being polite," Marcus replied, recovering his composure. "Better than presenting the primitive mammal who somehow learned to speak." Her laugh was genuine, a sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. "I like you already. I'm Serena Dax, Marcus Vale, but you already knew that." He accepted the glass of shimmering liquid she offered from a passing server. "Cultural attach? Trade representative? Something like that." Her expression grew more serious. "Though perhaps we should discuss my official title somewhere more private. There are things you should know before tomorrow's opening session." Marcus's diplomatic instincts prickled. "That sounds ominous." "It should." Serena glanced around the hall with practiced casualness. The Kryn and the Sorvians had been at war for 70 cycles. Their hatred runs deeper than ocean trenches. Yet here they are, suddenly interested in peace negotiations. Doesn't that strike you as peculiar? I prefer hopeful to peculiar. That optimism will get you killed. Her hand touched his arm briefly, the contact sending an unexpected warmth through him. "Meet me in the Archive Gardens tonight, after the 3rd moon rises. I'll explain everything." Before Marcus could respond, she melted into the crowd with surprising grace. He stood there, glass in hand, wondering what he'd just agreed to. The evening proceeded with the tedious formality he'd expected. Arbiter Volan, the Assembly's supreme leader, delivered a speech about unity and cooperation that rang hollow given the obvious tensions in the room. General Cross of the Kryn Empire stood like a statue of contained violence, his obsidian carapace reflecting the ambient light. Across the hall, Ambassador Thel of the Sorvian Collective maintained an expression of serene contempt, her tentacles coiling and uncoiling in patterns. Marcus's research indicated deep agitation. As the reception wound down, Marcus made his way to his assigned quarters, a surprisingly comfortable suite that adapted to his needs, furniture reforming itself to human-appropriate dimensions. He had 3 hours until the third moon rose. Marcus spent the time reviewing his notes, but found his thoughts drifting to Serena Dax. Something about her felt both familiar and utterly foreign, like a half-remembered dream. The way she'd looked at him suggested she knew far more about this situation than any cultural attach should. When the time came, Marcus slipped from his quarters and followed the directions Serena had discreetly provided. The archive gardens sprawled across an entire section of the station, a carefully cultivated wilderness that housed living records of galactic history. Each plant, each arrangement of stones, commemorated some pivotal moment in interstellar affairs. He found Serena waiting beside a fountain that flowed upward, defying gravity in mesmerizing spirals. The light from all 3 moons cast her in an ethereal glow, and Marcus felt his breath catch. "You came," she said softly. "You knew I would. I hoped." She moved closer, her expression troubled. "Marcus, everything you've been told about these negotiations is a lie. The Kryn and Sorvians aren't seeking peace. They're planning something far worse." "What do you mean?" "I've spent months gathering evidence. They're using these talks as cover for a joint military operation. And you, as the naive human mediator, are meant to be their scapegoat when everything falls apart." Marcus's mind raced. "Why are you telling me this? Who are you really?" Serena hesitated, vulnerability flashing across her features. "I'm someone who's tired of watching innocent people become pawns in games they don't understand. I'm someone who—" She trailed off, then seemed to make a decision. "Come with me. There's something you need to see." She led him deeper into the gardens, to a secluded area where holographic archives floated like fireflies. With quick gestures, Serena activated several displays, showing communication logs, supply manifests, and strategic plans that painted a damning picture. "They're planning to stage an attack during the 3rd session," she explained, pulling up a schematic. "It will be blamed on extremists from both sides, justifying a joint military response that will consolidate their power and eliminate dissenting voices on both worlds. And I'm supposed to be connected to these extremists somehow. They've already planted evidence in your quarters. Encrypted files, communication records, all fabricated, but convincing enough for the Assembly." Marcus stared at the evidence, feeling his carefully constructed optimism crumbling. "Why help me?" "You're risking everything." Serena met his eyes, and in that moment, Marcus saw something that transcended species and culture's raw, honest emotion. "Because I believe people can choose to be better than their circumstances. Because I think you might be the kind of person worth taking a risk for." The sincerity in her voice struck something deep within Marcus. "Thank you for the warning. We should—" A sound behind them made them both freeze. Marcus turned to see 3 security drones descending from the garden canopy. Their sensors locked on them. "Step away from the archives," commanded a voice that Marcus recognized as belonging to Captain Druven, head of Assembly Security. "Both of you are under arrest for accessing restricted information." This was a setup, Marcus breathed, understanding flooding through him. Serena grabbed his hand. "I'm sorry. I thought we'd have more time." More security forces emerged from the gardens, forming a perimeter. General Cross and Ambassador Fell appeared, their expressions of triumph identical despite their supposed enmity. The human spy caught in the act, Cross declared, his voice like grinding stone. How convenient. And the traitor who aided him, Fell added, her tentacles gesturing toward Serena. Both will face the Assembly's justice. As energy restraints snapped around his wrists, Marcus looked at Serena, seeing fear but also determination in her luminous eyes. Their hands remained clasped until the guards forced them apart. "This isn't over," Marcus said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Serena's expression held something he couldn't quite name. "No," she agreed quietly. "It's only beginning." The detention center occupied the lowest level of the celestial citadel, a place where the artificial gravity felt heavier, where the walls absorbed sound and hope in equal measure. Marcus had been alone for 6 hours, counting the subtle shifts in the ambient lighting that suggested the passage of time. His cell was a perfect sphere of translucent material that allowed him to see out but prevented any communication with the guards who occasionally passed by. He'd tried everything reasoning. With the security officers, demanding to contact Earth's embassy, even attempting to explain the conspiracy he'd uncovered. Each attempt was met with silence, or worse, pitying looks that suggested they'd already decided his guilt. Marcus sat cross-legged on the curved floor, mentally reviewing everything that had happened. The trap had been elegant in its simplicity, used Serena to lure him to restricted archives, catch him accessing classified information, paint both of them as conspirators. The evidence planted in his quarters would seal the narrative perfectly. What he couldn't understand was Serena's role. Had she been part of the setup from the beginning, or was she another victim? The way she'd looked at him in the garden, the genuine fear in her eyes when they were separated, it hadn't felt like an act that the cell's opacity suddenly shifted, becoming a perfect mirror. Marcus watched his reflection waver, then transform into a communication screen. Serena's face appeared, her violet features tight with worry. "Marcus," her voice came through softly, barely above a whisper. "Can you hear me?" "Serena?" He moved closer to the screen. "How are you? I don't have long. I'm using a private channel, one my father doesn't know about." She glanced over her shoulder nervously. "I need you to understand something. Everything I told you in the garden was true. I wasn't setting you up. Your father?" Marcus felt pieces clicking into place. "Arbiter Volan is your father?" "Yes." Pain flickered across her features. "He's been manipulated by Cross and Thel. They've convinced him that a unified military front is the only way to maintain galactic stability. He doesn't see that they're building an empire, not preserving peace." Marcus absorbed this information. "Why help me? You could have stayed silent, kept yourself safe." Serena's silver gold eyes held his through the screen. "Because 3 months ago, I accessed the restricted archives on my own. I was researching trade agreements when I stumbled onto their communications. I've been trying to find someone who could help expose them, someone the Assembly might actually listen to. And you chose the naive human diplomat?" A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I chose the diplomat who gave a speech at the Andromeda Summit about the power of honest communication, who convinced the Therixian delegates to reconsider their isolationist stance, not through threats or bribes, but by actually listening to their concerns. I chose someone who might believe that peace is worth fighting for." Marcus felt warmth spread through his chest. "You researched me?" "Extensively." She looked away, a faint luminescence coloring her cheeks. A blush, he realized. "Your work is impressive, Marcus Vale, but more than that, the way you approach diplomacy, the genuine care you show for understanding others. It's rare, especially in these halls, Serena." He placed his hand against the screen. "What's going to happen to us?" Your trial is scheduled for dawn. They're calling it an emergency session. No time for Earth to send legal representation. No opportunity for a proper defense. The evidence they've manufactured is comprehensive. Without intervention, the verdict is predetermined. And you? I'm confined to my quarters under protective custody. My father believes I was manipulated by you. Her expression hardened. He won't listen to anything I say about the conspiracy. He thinks grief over my mother's death has made me paranoid. Marcus heard the pain in her voice. Your mother? She died 2 cycles ago. She was a council member who opposed military expansion. Her shuttle malfunctioned during a routine trip. Serena's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I don't believe it was an accident. I'm sorry. Marcus wished he could offer more than words. Serena, even if they find me guilty, don't let this stop you. Keep searching for proof. There must be someone in the assembly who'll listen. There might be. She leaned closer to her screen. Counselor Harn has been asking questions about the peace negotiations. He's old guard, believes in the assembly's founding principles. But without concrete evidence, he won't act. Then we find evidence. You're locked in a detention cell, Marcus. Your trial begins in 7 hours. He smiled despite the circumstances. I've worked through worse constraints. During the Proxima negotiations, I once convinced 2 species to share water rights while trapped in a collapsed mine shaft with 3 hours of oxygen. This isn't a mine shaft. This is the most secure facility in the quadrant, which means it has to be monitored, regulated, documented. Every system has vulnerabilities. Marcus began pacing the curved space of his cell. Serena, you said you've been investigating for 3 months. What files did you access? What patterns did you notice? Over the next 20 minutes, Serena detailed everything she'd discovered communication timestamps that coincided suspiciously with military movements. Financial transfers between supposedly hostile governments. Supply chain anomalies that suggested joint operations. Marcus listened intently, his diplomatic mind assembling the pieces into a coherent picture. The shipment cross mentioned, Marcus said suddenly, during the 3rd plenary session. That's in 4 days. Whatever they're planning happens then. But you'll be executed by then. Serena's voice cracked slightly. Marcus, I can't let that happen. The raw emotion in her words made Marcus pause. He studied her face through the screen, seeing past the alien features to the person beneath someone intelligent, brave, and desperately trying to do the right thing in an impossible situation. Why does it matter so much to you? He asked gently. You barely know me. Serena was quiet for a long moment. When I first saw you at the reception, I thought you'd be like every other diplomat polished surface, hiding calculated ambition. But then you smiled at a maintenance drone that accidentally bumped into you. You apologized to it. Do you know how rare that is? Most delegates don't even acknowledge their existence. They're sentient beings, Marcus said, confused. Why wouldn't I? Exactly. Serena's expression softened. You don't even realize how unusual you are. And when I spoke with you, when I saw how genuinely you engaged with every being you met, how you looked for connections instead of differences. She paused, seeming to gather courage. I've spent my life surrounded by people who see others as tools or obstacles. You see them as people. Marcus felt his heart rate accelerate. Serena, I know it's foolish, she continued quickly. We're different species from different worlds. We've known each other less than a day. But there's something about you that makes me want to believe in possibilities I'd given up on. The vulnerability in her voice. The hope and fear intertwined. Marcus recognized it because he felt the same inexplicable pull. In another life, under different circumstances, he might have dismissed it as stress or proximity. But standing in that cell, facing execution, he found he had no patience for self-deception. "It's not foolish," he said quietly. "I feel it too. From the moment you spoke to me at the reception, something clicked. Like recognition, but of something I'd never encountered before." Serena's eyes widened, their silver-gold depths reflecting emotions he was only beginning to understand. "Marcus, An alarm sounded in the background on her end. She looked away sharply, fear crossing her features. "Someone's coming. I have to go. Wait, when will I see you again?" "The trial. I'll be there." She reached toward her screen, as if she could touch him across the distance. "I promise I'll find a way to help you. Serena, don't do anything that puts you in danger. A bit late for that." Her smile was sad, but determined. "Try to rest, Marcus. Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll face it together." The screen flickered and went dark, returning to its mirrored surface. Marcus stared at his reflection, seeing the truth written across his own features. Somehow, impossibly, he was falling for an alien woman he'd just met. And unless they found a way to expose the conspiracy, tomorrow would be his last day alive. Hours passed in restless contemplation. Marcus tried to formulate plans, but without resources or allies, his options seemed impossibly limited. Eventually, exhaustion claimed him, and he drifted into uneasy sleep. He woke to the sound of his cell opening. Captain Druven stood at the entrance, flanked by 4 guards. "Time for your trial, Ambassador Vale," the captain announced, his tone professionally neutral. "I'm required to inform you that you have the right to present a defense. Though given the evidence, I wouldn't expect leniency." Marcus stood, straightening his rumpled uniform with as much dignity as he could muster. "Captain, have you actually examined the evidence against me? Or are you just following orders?" Something flickered in Druven's eyes, doubt, perhaps, or curiosity. But he simply gestured for Marcus to follow. They led him through winding corridors, passing windows that showed the station's interior gardens and living spaces waking to a new day. Marcus glimpsed ordinary beings starting their routines, unaware that a trial was about to unfold that could alter the course of galactic history. The assembly chamber had been transformed overnight. Where before it had hosted receptions and diplomatic gatherings, it now resembled a courtroom from humanity's darkest historical periods. Tiered seats surrounded a central platform where Marcus would stand accused. Every seat was filled with council members, delegates, and observers. At the highest tier sat Arbiter Volan, his imposing figure radiating authority. To his right, General Cross loomed like a monument to war. To his left, Ambassador Thel arranged her tentacles in patterns that Marcus's research suggested indicated satisfaction. And in a private viewing box, isolated from the main assembly, sat Serena. Their eyes met across the distance, and Marcus saw determination burning in her luminous gaze. Captain Druven led Marcus to the central platform, where energy restraints hummed to life around him. The captain hesitated before activating them fully. "For what it's worth," Druven said quietly, "I've reviewed your previous diplomatic work. You've never shown deceptive tendencies before." "Thank you, Captain," Marcus replied, surprised by the gesture. Druven nodded slightly and retreated to his post. Arbiter Volan rose, his voice filling the chamber. "This emergency tribunal is convened to address charges of espionage, conspiracy, and attempted sabotage against Ambassador Marcus Vale of Earth. Magistrate Quen will present the evidence." A tall, angular being stepped forward, her crystalline features reflecting light in sharp patterns. "Arbiter, council members, the evidence is irrefutable." Magistrate Quen's voice was precise, clinical. "We have encrypted files recovered from the ambassador's quarters, containing classified military information from both the Kryn Empire and the Sorvian Collective. Holographic displays materialized, showing documents that Marcus had never seen. They were sophisticated forgeries, complete with access timestamps and authentication codes. Furthermore, Quen continued, security footage shows the ambassador accessing restricted archives in the company of known security risks. The image of Marcus and Serena in the garden appeared, damning in its clarity. These actions constitute a clear violation of assembly law and a betrayal of the diplomatic trust extended to Earth. Marcus listened to the accusations pile up, each one carefully constructed to be almost impossible to refute. When Quen finished, Valan turned his attention to the platform. Ambassador Vale, how do you respond to these charges? Marcus took a breath, knowing this might be his only chance. Arbiter, council members, I stand before you not as a spy, but as someone who discovered a conspiracy that threatens everything this assembly represents. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Valan raised a hand for silence. Explain yourself, Ambassador. The evidence against me has been manufactured by those who stand to gain from these failed peace negotiations. General Cross and Ambassador. Thel are not enemies. They're collaborators planning a joint military operation that will consolidate their power and eliminate opposition on both their worlds. Preposterous. Cross thundered, rising from his seat. The human fabricates conspiracy theories to save himself. Then explain why you were meeting privately with Ambassador Thel in the restricted section of the Memorial Gardens. Marcus shot back. I witnessed it myself before being framed. Ambassador Thel's tentacles coiled tightly. The ambassador is clearly delusional. The Sorvian collective has been at war with the Kryn Empire for 7 decades. The suggestion that we would cooperate is absurd. Marcus pressed on. Is it? Then why? A commotion at the viewing box interrupted him. Serena was on her feet, guards moving to restrain her. Father. Her voice rang through the chamber. You must listen to him. I've found proof of their conspiracy financial records, communication logs, everything Marcus described. Valan's expression hardened. Serena, you are out of order. Return to your seat. No. She struggled against the guards. Mother would have listened. She would have investigated before condemning an innocent being. The mention of his deceased wife made Valan pause. His voice, when he spoke, carried an edge of pain beneath the authority. Your mother's death has clouded your judgment, daughter. You are dismissed from these proceedings. As guards escorted Serena from the chamber, her eyes locked with Marcus's. In that moment, he understood she'd tried, risked everything, and failed. Now it was up to him. But before Marcus could speak again, Magistrate Quen produced another piece of evidence. Arbiter, we have received testimony from a credible source claiming that Ambassador Vale attempted to recruit them into his espionage network. A figure emerged from a side entrance Nessa. Serena's handmaiden, her expression troubled. Tell the council what you told me, Quen instructed. Nessa's voice trembled. Ambassador Vale approached me 3 days ago. He asked me to provide information about council security protocols and my mistress's schedule. When I refused, he threatened to have me implicated in his schemes. Marcus stared in shock. That's a lie. I never spoke to you before yesterday. The ambassador is correct, Nessa said, and Marcus's hope sparked. It was 4 days ago, not 3. I apologize for the error. The small detail, seemingly correcting herself, actually made her testimony more credible. Marcus realized with sinking certainty that she'd been coached perfectly. Valan's expression grew grim. Is there anyone who can vouch for your whereabouts and character, Ambassador? Marcus looked around the chamber, seeing hostile faces and neutral ones, but no allies. Even Counselor Harn, whom Serena had mentioned, sat silent and impassive. I have my record, Marcus said finally. Years of successful negotiations, peace agreements that have held, relationships built on trust and honesty. That should speak louder than fabricated evidence. Past service does not excuse present treachery, Magistrate Quen declared. The evidence is comprehensive and damning. Volan rose to his full height. Unless there is further testimony or evidence, I am prepared to render judgment. Marcus felt time slowing. This was at the end of everything. He thought of Earth, of his mother who would hear of his execution without understanding why. He thought of all the diplomatic work left undone, the bridges he'd hoped to build. And he thought of Serena, dragged from the chamber for trying to defend him, a woman he barely knew, but who had awakened something profound in his heart. "I call for a vote," Volan announced. "All those who find Ambassador Marcus Vale guilty of the charges presented?" Hands rose throughout the chamber, dozens, then scores. A few abstained. None voted for innocence. "The verdict is unanimous guilt," Volan declared, his voice heavy with finality. "Marcus Vale, you are hereby sentenced to execution by dissolution, to be carried out at sunset. May whatever deities you believe in show you more mercy than galactic law allows." Marcus closed his eyes, accepting the verdict even as his mind raced for options that no longer existed. But then, cutting through the solemn atmosphere like a blade of light, came a voice he'd thought silenced. "Stop!" The chamber doors burst open. Serena stood there, freed from her guards, her silver hair wild around her face, her violet skin luminous with determination and desperation. And as she ran toward the platform, as guards moved to intercept her, she screamed words that froze every being in the chamber. "Don't kill my husband.